We're live, pal.
Hey, we're live, pal. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the A-Side Live Chat here on MMAfighting.com. I am, of course, José Youngs in beautiful, sunny, warm Arizona. Now, we have a special guest today, someone that I've wanted to get on for a long time. I would say not even probably, definitely one of my closer friends on the scene, the journalist scene, regardless of it's MMA or regular sports media. But, Casey, I have a question for you.
Oh, me?
What? Yes. What knockout did Jorge Masvidal beat to get the fastest knockout in UFC history?
Oh, was it Ludwig and the guy with the colorful hair?
Yeah, 7 seconds. That's what they want you to think. That's what they want you to think.
That's not really
it. What if
Yeah.
Sure, but what if I told you the actual fastest knockout in UFC history is an UFC EA 3 when Cody Garbrandt head kicked TJ Dillashaw in New York City just 6 seconds into the fight. I know our special guest has very fond memories of that. I'm sure he didn't know where I was going with that question, but joining us this week is Danny Austin up in snowy, bitter, freezing Calgary. What's up, Danny?
What's going on, guys? Are we going to talk about that knockout?
We're going to talk about it because I already tweeted the video saying we're going to talk about it, so people want to know the story.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for having me on. Yeah, it's good to have me on.
The story is me, Danny, and Jim Edwards were at the UFC 3 remember they did the big presentation, Casey, in Madison Square Garden, where they unveiled everything. Demetrius Johnson was there, and we all got to play the demo. And they had a very limited number of fighters you could choose. Well, I beat Danny like 5 times in a row with Cody Garbrandt. He just kept head kicking him usually. And go ahead. What do you want to say, Danny?
It's worth noting, I do not play video games.
Clearly.
I had never played before. I mean, not that I've never played video games, but I've never played like an EA sport game.
Coincidentally, neither have I, because it was a demo. None of us have played this game. We were all the first people on planet Earth to play this game.
Fair enough. Well, and as we learned, I'm not good at UFC. I've still never won a game, and I've had nights at Oscar's place, just drinking beers and playing that game for 8 hours. I've never won a game. But yeah, I mean, the worst part about it was you were like, "Yo, it would be good if you stopped letting me kick you in the head," and then immediately kicked me in the head.
Yeah, it's all on video on my Twitter. Danny goes, it's like if I could stop you from kicking me in the head, I could probably win. And then 6 seconds into the game, I head kicked him and knocked him dead. It was a good time in my life. And then we got to go interview the late, great Kobe Bryant, and then we did the body armor thing, and that was a eventful week in New York City.
Was that George Bisping, or was that?
Yes, that was Georges St-Pierre, Michael Bisping. I know we're going to talk about Georges St-Pierre moving forward. This is why I wanted you on the show. But Danny, you're a Calgary Son. Is that correct?
Calgary Sun, Calgary Herald, yeah.
Calgary. So, and you are the Stampeders.
UFC.
Yes,
yeah,
you guys definitely know. Yes, you guys know Danny from his mixed martial arts coverage in Canada. He also does the Flames and the Stampeders. Is that the CFL team?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Danny's my go-to guy for CFL information.
I freaking love CFL. I think it's so much better than National Football League. Canadian football is the best. 3 downs.
Canadian Football League is the most fun sport to cover.
It is.
In the world.
I've been to one game. I think I went to Stampeders game. And I remember when the fourth quarter came around, I think the Stampeders were down by 60 points. I'm like, this game's over. I'm getting out of here. And then they come back and they actually won the game. They scored 8 touchdowns in 14 seconds. I don't know how it happened. And so I actually left the stadium. I came back in. And no, it's Canada. They just took my word. Like, do I have a ticket? They let me back in. So it was a great time. I don't know how. It's like rock and jock football, where if you throw a touchdown from a certain point in the field, you get 50 points. I don't know. It's awesome.
It's not, but it's basically. Well, no, I feel like every time, because you guys came to Calgary for the Poirier Alvarez fight, and you ended up going to a puppy parade. Case.
Oh yeah. I just took pictures of other people's dogs. I took at least about 30 or 40 pictures. I saw cute dogs and I go, hey, can I take a photo of it? And then I just did a little fist pose of dog, and it was great, man.
I walk around the city all the time, and that stuff's never going on. But yeah, you make me believe.
I was like, this is amazing. I arrived at my hotel. It was like a dog parade. I was like, this is great.
The only time I've ever been to Calgary, because obviously we have AK Lee up there, so he usually covers the Fox cards and the ESPN cards. But when we did the Edmonton card case at UFC 248, I had a 2.5-hour layover in Calgary, and that is the most fascinating airport I have ever experienced in my life. It has like cross signs and cars driving around inside, like don't walk, cross, all that kind of stuff. It is super bizarre.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing with Calgary is it's an oil and gas town. So when oil and gas was booming, they had like too much money. So that airport has just like the most ridiculous thing. And now there's no money here, so we just have this like not even particularly high tech. Like it's very Canadian, and it's like in the way it's funny. There's dinosaurs. There's all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
It's a wild.
It is one of the more hideous, like, each gate is not pretty at all. Like, it's just concrete and metal everywhere. And then it's, like, pretty to walk around. But, like, when you get to your gate, you're like, oh, God. I've sit on, like, cement, like, blocks to wait for your flight. Anyway, we can make fun of Canada all we want. But you guys know the drill. Ask us your questions. We'll answer them. You can ask us on Twitter. You can ask us on the site. We can talk about whatever we want. I know there's Jessica Crystal Crew. I was going to say, Danny, since he's gone off the road for his usual Vegas trips for the pay-per-views, has completely missed the Crystal craze captivating the communities. Danny,
it's worth noting that that's not true. The Crystal
ahead.
stuff was going on before COVID. And the only reason I'm not on the road is because I have to quarantine for 2 weeks if I come back in a hotel.
That's what I was going to say.
No, you guys were talking about crystals way before. Way before last March.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Yeah.
We have, of course, Pizza Carol's in January, went all out on the Crystal craze. But welcome. You can join us. Jessica, send Danny some crystals.
I mean, I've got my Raptors championship ring. That's the closest I got. It's probably
Ooh,
Oh, wow.
Wow.
You guys still don't know how to throw a parade.
Oh. We're not allowed to throw parades anymore.
In America, we throw parades. Yeah, that's a
Also,
freedom.
someone in the YouTube comments wants Danny to know that the Flames suck, apparently.
I mean, that's not true, but it's valid comment.
yeah.
I mean,
I love Jerome McGinley growing up. He was one of my favorite non-Bruins players. But anyway, Casey, what is our first question from our illustrious listeners?
First question. Let's talk about this week.
Sneaky good matchup, UFC Vegas 19 from Tristan Gordet on the site. To MMA Fighting. Who do you got in the heavyweight battle between Dawkins and Olynyk? I think the matchup is sneaky good on the Saturday's Fight Night card. That is not the matchup I thought, but yes. Is it Chris or Kyle Dawkins? Which one is it?
Chris
Dawkins and Alexei Olynyk. Chris Dawkins won on Fight Island. He has phenomenal boxing at heavyweight. Alexei Olynyk, of course, is Alexei Olynyk, one of the premier grapplers in the heavyweight division. Both very undersized for heavyweight. Casey, initial thoughts on this heavyweight matchup that is apparently going to steal the show?
Anytime Olynyk fights, I'm excited, and I don't know why. He just like this. I don't know. He just looks like this. He looks like he kind of his. I don't know. He absolutely looks like a fighter from like a video game, but like he's like this really nice guy, but then all he really can do is like just throw these hammers, and he'll just like squeeze your head like this. You just kind of he lies on top of you and just squeezes his arms together and you die. So yeah, and he's like 200 years old. He has like 3,000 fights. So yeah, this is gonna be great. I don't know very much about Chris Dawkins. He's the cop, right? He's like the Boston cop. Yeah. Yeah. Cool fight. Yeah, it's not the heavyweight fight I thought people were gonna be talking about, but
That's not
yeah, but yeah. Got Chris Dawkins, fan club, wants to talk about him. Sure.
I believe he walks out to Fox on the Run too, which is a very underappreciated walkout song.
It is.
And
I just think we need guys who don't look like Kamaru. Like, I mean, in terms of just like the muscles everywhere. Like, I want guys who look like a dad who can beat me up. in the UFC, and like
both of these guys are dad bought it out. Both of these guys.
Yeah.
And I like that. I don't know much more to add.
Alexei Oleinik is the first fighter in UFC history, or the first fighter on the current UFC roster that fought in 4 decades. The 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s, and then he fought on the first card of 2020. So he's fought in 4 decades professionally, which is just bananas to me.
Yeah. That sounds like anecdotal, and then you really think about it, and that's actually insane.
He also had a lot of thoughts on when we interviewed him last January on the Connor card. It was right around when Russia got the ban for the World Cup and the Olympics because of the doping situation they had. And I was like, Russia is very they take their national heroes very seriously. Obviously, you could see how popular Khabib is. I was like, added pressure, and my God, he talked to me for about 20 minutes on just that topic.
Which is amazing, because were you there in the scrum when I asked Khabib?
I did.
4 years ago?
Yeah, he killed you with his stare.
Yeah, it's probably top 2 most uncomfortable interviews I've ever had. The other was what was his name?
Khalil Roundtree.
Khalil Roundtree just hated me, and we couldn't figure out why. And he really just he hated me specifically, not my questions. Just didn't like me.
I love asking Khabib questions that he clearly didn't want to answer, or he's already answered 6,000 times, and he'll just give you that stare. They're like, oh man, you can see him like just pounding you in his brain. It's great.
So Ali had Abdelaziz had his dominance media day last March with all of his stable of fighters, and this is when Khabib was still scheduled to fight Tony Ferguson in Brooklyn. We interviewed in March. They were supposed to fight in April, and this is right when COVID started to kind of hit America. And the day of the Dominance Media Day is when New York put out a state of emergency. And I asked him, I go, so New York just put out a state of emergency. And he basically told me to shut up and not talk about it. And then look what happened. The fight got canceled anyway, and then moved to the Middle East because they couldn't hold the event. So I was like, it was as Mark Raimondi says, it's a legitimate question.
Poor Khabib. I mean, obviously,
What did you ask him, Danny?
I asked him, I was like, given that all these Russian athletes have been banned, basically, do you feel on some level like there's almost more responsibility representing Russian athletes and being a good example of what Russian athletes, can be? And that's not necessarily a question you ask 3 days before a fight, to be fair. I do. I mean, I know that I don't have 6 amateur fights, so I'm not qualified to actually be a professional journalist. 2, 3. But that is one of those ones where you learn there are questions you ask out of fight week and questions you ask in fight week. But yeah, it was it would have been interesting if he'd had thoughts on it, but he didn't, and he didn't like me.
He got real upset.
Get in line. Get in line.
That was also that was UFC 205, right? Or was that Brooklyn?
Yeah, I think one of those. 205.
Yeah, so he was pissed that he wasn't even getting the title shot that week anyway. Four Corner Sports New York on Twitter. What is your sleeper fight for UFC 259? 259. Ooh. UFC 259 is the 3 title fights at the top. Dominic Cruz is on the prelims. Sean Brady, Jake Matthews, Kai Kara-France,
Joe B,
Ratchik Santos.
Jeez.
Yeah, Ratchik Santos,
Brady Matthews,
Tim Elliott. So there's some.
Yeah.
So do I.
Does that count? Diego Santos. Does that count as a sleeper fight? I mean,
no, I think that's a good pick.
Yeah, I mean, Diego Santos has just been doing the same thing and by the same thing, I mean, being amazing. And, maybe not an amazing fighter, but his fights are always amazing. So that's it. That fight's unbelievable. This card is unbelievable.
How is this card the same amount of money as the pay-per-view this week? Last weekend, that's just wild. I mean, good, but
no. My sleeper would be on the prelims. We got Song Yadong and Kyler Phillips. I think that fight absolutely rules. Kyler Phillips kind of got real popular after his Fight Island performance because he got the cornrows and the beard, so people call him Mini Masvidal. And he walks out. He has his hands behind his back. I don't think he's trying to do it, but he also fights and trains in Arizona, so he kind of flies the Arizona flag pretty prominently. Islam Makhachev and Drew Dober is a freaking scrap too. I forgot that fight was on the card. My God.
I know Casey said it jokingly, but how is this the same amount of money?
I know. I know.
Like,
Looking at it,
cool?
if you cut off the main card, because as of right now, I assume Dominic Cruz, Casey Kenny is the featured prelim. Like, that's an amazing ESPN card. If you just cut out the main event, it's still a great ESPN card.
I'm gonna be a bit of a rain on the parade type guy, real quick. But how many fights are on this card right now? Like 30?
A lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot.
So I'm looking at the Tapology page right now, and right now at the very bottom they have all the fights. They always have the canceled or fizzled bouts, and you go to any previous UFC card, you're going to see 4 or 5 fights canceled almost every time due to COVID. Right now, at least according to Tapology, none of these fights are off due to COVID. I don't think if this card goes down as is, this could be the first UFC card in the pandemic that hasn't lost a fight due to COVID. So that's extremely good news, and also we're still a few weeks away.
Yeah.
So
I think
but right now it looks great.
Carlos Ulberg on the first fight of the night, that's Israel Adesanya's main training partner. Fun fact, he turned down a spot. I believe this is the story. I don't know if he was going to be on the show or he was the guy. I think he was supposed to be the Bachelor in New Zealand, like the Bachelor, and then 20 women would fight for his attention. And then he's like, "No, I want to be a fist fighter." So I interviewed him in Fight Island. Super, super nice guy. Body fat is probably close to 1%. So yeah, that dude looks good getting off the bus, as they say in the business.
Can I ask?
Kennedy,
go ahead.
ahead.
Is March Madness canceled? Like, why is this card as stacked as it is? Is it?
I think.
Well, there's no.
I don't know the reason.
Oh yeah, March Madness. Yeah, I forgot about that.
It's usually in the second half. I don't think March Madness would be starting at this time anyway. Usually it's like the second, maybe halfway through the second week of March, and kind of flows into April. But I don't know this March Madness situation off the top of my head.
It's just they generally a lot of these big cards align with when there's not anything directly in competition with it, right? The last March's card was Adesanya, Romero, Weili, and Joanna, and then before that, I know it was Cyborg, Yana, and Frank Edgar fought Brian Ortega. It was supposed to be Frank Edgar Holloway, and that had the Sugar Sean show, and so that was a good card. And then UFC 209, right. Ortega and Frank Edgar. That was in Detroit.
No, you're thinking about. No, that was in Las Vegas.
Was it?
You're thinking of Jose Aldo fought Max Holloway in Detroit.
Yeah, and then that was Francis and
Overeem, and and it had Eddie and Gaethje and Cejudo Pettis, and that was some good scraps on that card. And then UFC 209 was Woodley and Thompson, but the original co-main event was Ferguson and Khabib. Before Khabib, that was when Khabib got rushed to the hospital, the day of the weigh-ins. So those were originally. March cards are historically really, really high quality. Just they don't, as Casey says, they don't always stay the same by the time fight night comes around.
Yeah, so and this card's early March. So if the March Madness, as far as the big conference, the Final Four games, that won't happen until the end of March anyway.
April.
Yeah,
usually April.
Oh, does it go all the way to April now? Okay.
It dips into April because now March Madness it didn't have so many rounds because now there's there's a ton of playing games now. If you're there's supposed to be 64 teams in March Madness, but if you're the 69th best team, you're allowed to you win this game, then you can go into the tournament. They have those one-off games a lot now because it's all TV rights. Weirdos. But Duke and Kentucky suck. So
yeah, take that, amateur basketball players.
No, they really do. I think it's the first time in God knows how long that neither's ranks, which is crazy. MMG 2K20 on the site. Dana at the Barbers. That's the headline that's the subject of this question.
Props to that.
I respect. The fact that Dana gave props to Maycee Barber after a loss and spoke about her still becoming the youngest champion in the UFC makes me think he will somehow find a way to get a title shot before the deadline. Also, considering Dana's rocky relationship with John Jones, do you think he will try to make this happen? And also, honest opinion on the 8K cameras. 8K is obviously in quotes. So I asked Dana, if you watch the press conference, I started with, So Alexa Grasso, and then Dana cut me off and says, she looked awesome. Maycee Barber is a gangster, though. And then started talking about Maycee Barber. And my question was going to be about Alexa Grasso, and he just took the Maycee Barber ball and ran with it. Danny, what did you make of Dana's infatuation with Maycee Barber's quest to become the youngest champion in UFC history?
I mean, it's pretty pointless, right? Like,
all right, moving on. No, got it.
Nothing happened at this point, and there's nothing wrong with her like becoming the 4th youngest champion if that's how it plays out. But like the idea, she has what 10 months now, and she hasn't been in the top 10. Yeah,
and coming off 2 losses now in a row.
Yeah, like what? Like not what are we talking about, but like what is Dana talking about? Like I respect the question, and I don't. I'm sure they'd love to have someone younger than Jon Jones win the championship, but like it's not going to happen. So she has to beat someone, and with all due respect to Alexa Grasso, she has to beat someone better than that. So I just like good for Dana. He may want it, but like even Dana White doesn't always get what he wants, and it's not happening.
Right, and I think Alexa Grasso is not the most. She's not the biggest fan favorite, and the people that like watch her fight, because I saw on Twitter a lot of people wanted her to lose, and were basically throwing a parade.
Grasso?
Barber? No, Barber. When Barber lost, people basically threw a parade because it was she had the beef with the very weird feud with Paige, where she kept trying to pick a fight with Paige Van Zandt, and before that, she kept trying to pick a fight with Mackenzie Dern. Like she was trying to pick her opponents before she even had a UFC fight, and then none of those fights happened. She got the Roxanne fight. And Casey, you and I talked about this backstage at the fight, and actually, Dan, you were at the fight too. It was the Connor card. Maycee Barber was a minus 1,000 favorite against Roxanne Modafferi, which we were all just like, that is insanity to us. And then she lost, blew her knee out, and then she came back, and she hits really hard. Like every time she punched Alexa Grasso, you could tell that hurt, but she was also throwing punches from like 7 feet away at times, which I think by the 3rd round, the UFC commentators finally picked up on. But anyway, Casey, you're the camera guy. What do you think of the 8K cameras?
It looked like someone put on the portrait filter on your iPhone. It didn't look good. I didn't like it. They weren't the 8K thing. I don't know what is this? Is that something DC said 8K? Yeah. Oh, okay. I don't know.
Because DC's gimmick on the broadcast is he doesn't know things, that he doesn't know terminology for things. Like when Dan Hardy starts talking about history for whatever reason, Daniel Cormier would be like, "Well, I've never heard of Attila the Hun," and then like stuff like that. And goes, "What is this 8K?" Like he's basically the dad. Like he just doesn't know. So yes, 8K is a Daniel Cormier term.
Okay. I can't.
It was amazing how many like MMA media Twitter people just spent like half an hour talking about how much they loved it. Like it was unbelievable.
I thought
it looks really
cool
good
for a bit. As a gimmick, it was cool, but like as a feature in these broadcasts, I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it adds anything.
I kind of tell you why I didn't like it. First of all, mainly because UFC like has all these cameras around the cage. They kind of use like B-roll cameras, and they'll shoot the low kind of from the low angle, and you'll see them in the promos and the highlight reels and stuff. But they're not the broadcast cameras. But this camera was different. It looked like it was like a fake out of focus. Where in a good camera, things kind of gradually go out of focus. So if something's say 2 feet behind you, it's slightly out of focus, and something is way in the distance, it's very out of focus. But in that camera, if it was this far behind you or this far behind you, it looked kind of the same out of focus, which kind of gives it everything that weird artificial blur, which you see a lot on you use the iPhone, you put the portrait mode on or whatever, you can get the same feeling. So I was like, it just looked weird, and the wide angle and like half the shots like out of focus too. It was bouncing focus. Like as soon as like someone's shoulder came in the shot, it would you could see it kind of changes focus all the time, and it was very disrupting to the eyes, because you look at this one shot and then they'll switch over to the regular camera, then everything's in focus, and you switch back to that camera, and it was kind of it was just weird, and a lot of time it was just overexposed. It's like just from camera stuff, how their shoulders and the highlights on them were just like really blown out. It just the colors didn't match a lot. I mean, I applaud change, and trying to improve the product. But yeah, it's
it looks really, really good when you're in a giant football field. When there's like a lot of like there's green and there's sky and there's fans and there's like all the colors in the background, like because they normally use it for when the players run onto the field and like it's a dark like compact shot and then it just opens up. Or they what they were doing in college football is they would key on one player, so they would have like a 3-minute continuous shot following this guy, but it was like really close. That was awesome. Don't know why they need it for Bruce Buffer introductions for every single fight.
Yeah.
Can I ask with that note, Casey, would it be better in a full arena for a UFC, with the crowd in the background? Do you think it would look better?
Yeah, it would look better, but not the way the UFC shoots things, honestly. Because if even when they had a full crowd, the way everything just kind of as soon as the cage ends, everything just kind of falls black. Like say if it was more like a big boxing event where they light the crowd and everything, you can see people, you can actually see faces a few rows back. It would look better. It would look better for full crowd, but even if the way the UFC lights it, no. But maybe just for the walkouts, the long tunnel walkouts, things for that, maybe. But in general, when they kind of went to it, went away from it, and then in between, when they went to it in between rounds, to see what the corners are saying, that was just a weird time to go to it, because I want to see the coach's face. I don't need everything out of focus. I don't know. I just you have to be very picky. You have to be very choosy when you use a camera like that, and they were just kind of. Well, we paid for it. We're gonna use it as much as we want,
Well, I think it's an ESPN camera, so I think it was probably an ESPN call. So ESPN has these 8K cameras, so they want to use them.
UFC controls that production. Those are UFC directors, UFC camera guys, everything. I mean, it's.
I liked the last big change I saw was. Dan, did you cover the early Fox Sports cards?
I mean, not in person.
Well, okay, perfect. Actually, that's perfect. Remember when they added the camera that was level with the octagon canvas? Casey, do you remember when the UFC added that camera that was right level with the canvas? So when it was grappling, it was right. You're looking at it like it's right in front of your eyes. I liked that change a lot because when someone would punch, the camera would shake because it was resting on the thing. So I was a big fan of that. That was the last major change I saw. Also, I found out. Do you remember when I messaged you guys on Slack, Casey, that there was supposedly a big thing for Conor's walkout for the Poirier fight that they apparently so they didn't do it, and this is what I heard. I heard from a few people. I don't know if
they had some drones.
No, so this is what happened, and this is why I heard this from a few people, but I've not heard it from anyone. I think that would be in an official word on it. Is Danny, you watched it through the broadcast. Casey, you watched through the broadcast. You see all the drones for the introduction for the pay-per-view. So welcome, we're on the pay-per-view of UFC. Apparently, those completely shot the Wi-Fi in the arena because it just blocked all the internet.
Yeah.
Which is why we lost internet in backstage. They didn't play Bob O'Reilly in the introduction because the drones just messed everything up. It caused all the things that are wireless to just go haywire. So they just scrapped it for Conor and Poirier's entrance.
That's it. That actually makes a lot of sense because every time normal media days pre-pandemic, the UFC sound guy would always come back to the media area and go who's got a wireless mic back here? You're I'm it's that guy. And I see these new reporters trying to use wireless mics. Dude, you're gonna get kicked out, man. I'm telling you, man. I ain't gonna snitch, man. But I'm just saying.
That happened to the Mo backstage for the Arizona card. He had to the camera guy came in and basically threw his microphone away. The only time the sound guy on the Milwaukee card, he goes, all right, you have to turn it off between interviews, but I'll let you keep it. He's the only one that's let me keep it.
He was being generous. He was being nice, yeah.
He was being very nice. Anyway, I digress. What is our next question? Thank you for the question, Energy 2K20.
I like that question.
Daniel Pompilio on Twitter. How does Gilbert Burns get another title shot? He had Usman out in the first round, so close. So, Danny, how does Gilbert Burns fight his way back to a title shot?
I think he actually laid it out in his post fight,
did.
right? Like, you just go and you win a bunch of fights. Like, you take the Robbie Lawler route. It's the only way to do it. And I mean, like, we're seeing it at middleweight. Like, look, if you lose the belt or you lose a title shot, all you can do is go win. And, like, the nice thing about headlining a UFC pay-per-view is your next fight, whether you won or lost, is going to be pretty big. So I think it's a pretty easy path back. You just have to go get in the octagon and fight and win. And win 2-3 fights this year, and you're right back in the mix.
I agree. He did, like, I'm glad you brought up the Robbie Lawler part, because those were his words exactly, right? Like, he wants to take that path.
Yeah. It's the only good path back.
But who's the last person? Who was the last challenger to lose
Francis.
the title? Francis? How many wins did he need?
3 or 4, and they were all knockouts.
Within like 2 seconds too.
I think his longest one was like a minute 15 or something like that.
Unfortunately, I feel for Mr. Burns is, while yes, winning solves everything, I don't know how many he will have to win. He might have a tougher route to get the belt back than, say, like Kamaru will have actually defending the belt, if that makes sense. I think
it's also tough because
he doesn't move the needle. I mean, it has nothing to do with Gilbert Burns. Unfortunately,
look at the top 5 at welterweight. That none of them have fought each other outside of Usman and Masvidal. Like, they're like, it's like that's the current situation with welterweight. Like, Covington hasn't fought Edwards. Covington hasn't fought Masvidal. Masvidal hasn't fought. Well, I guess he has fought Wonderboy, but he's sitting at 6. Like, no one is fighting each other because they're all trying to get the Masvidal, the Covington, and the Nate Diaz fights. And I think Gilbert Burns is just like, F it, I'll fight 6 through 15 to get through it. So it's going to be an interesting run.
His move may be then Leon Edwards, right? Like, Leon's the guy who no one wants to fight because he doesn't have a huge name. Go just fight Leon Edwards. That fight's going to be available to you if you want it.
It just depends on if Leon wants it, because Leon's kind of angling for this Colby Covington fight now, and then he just called out Nate Diaz, and then he just told Kamaru Usman, "See you soon." So it is like Gilbert's in a rough situation, like Casey said.
Yeah, and I think the timelines don't work out with, because I think Colby Burns is going to be at least 3-4 months, I would assume.
Also,
at least, and then I know, and Leon wants to fight, I think, before that. So
let's not forget, like, when Lawler lost to Hendricks for the vacant title, and then he went on that run. Johnny Hendricks got hurt, so for Johnny Hendricks it was Lawler. For Lawler, it was Hendricks, Ellenberger, Matt Brown, Hendricks. So, like, he had to fight 2 more while Hendricks was recovering. So when Hendricks came back from retirement, Robbie Lawler basically knocked off the 2 next contenders right there for him.
The first fight was great.
And the first fight was unbelievable.
One of the fight of the years. I think a lot of people had Lawler winning that fight. You know,
and a lot of people, and it's. I think it's a missed opportunity. They never did the rubber match. Yeah. But same as Shogun Machida, they never did Shogun Machida rubber match, and I thought both fights were awesome. And then in Francis's case, it's Stipe and DC basically tied up that division for so long that Francis just kept fighting the next number 1 contender and not like beats Curtis Blaydes, loses to Derrick Lewis in probably the worst fight in the history of UFC co-main events.
Between elite fighters, probably the worst fight
between top 3 opponents, worst fight ever.
But there were reasons for that.
There were guys who were good every other time. Other time those guys fight.
That's why it's such an anomaly, and I have no problem if they ever they want to run that back at any point, because it's probably not going to be different anyway. And then you think
it'll be the same? Okay, go.
I don't know. So he beats Curtis Blaydes in Beijing in a fight that everyone thought he would lose, because he lost 2 in a row. Yeah. Curtis Blaydes was murking people, knocks him out in like 35 seconds, and then. For whatever reason, they feed Cain Velasquez to him. Cain Velasquez hasn't fought in like 3 years. He loses, decapitates Junior Dos Santos, and then he goes, "All right, I should get a title shot right now." And then he goes, "F it, I'll stay active and fight Jairzinho, who's the boogeyman of the division at that point." Just broke Overeem's face in half, and then beats him in like 30 seconds. So it's like, and all in that time, Stipe and DC have coached tough, gotten hurt, had eye surgeries, and so Francis just continued to stay active.
The Francis story is amazing too, because it also involved, like, I don't know, has Dana ever criticized someone as badly as that press conference where he was like, this guy's gone arrogant. His whole team hates him. He's terrible. Like, do you remember when Dana just ripped Francis?
I do.
And then Francis's coach, I won't say who, but like wrote a reporter I was sitting with, and it was like, yeah, it's true. Like,
damn.
Like, yeah.
Well, his coach Ferdinand actually did an interview, like this year or like late last year, where he basically echoed the same thing Dana White said. He just kind of forgot about his team and everything. So that was and then the Boston cards when Danny Austin had to ask the relevant question about the towels that still gets brought up to this day.
The story there is like my buddy who like was an amateur boxer, but like wrote me during the press conference and was like, yeah, why were Francis's team putting towels over him in between rounds instead of ice? That's terrible. And for some reason, I have no idea why. It had been a long week, but I just like raised my hand, got it, and just asked Francis. And like, it's the closest I've ever come to a team just beating the shit out of me. They were so mad at me. Yeah, but it's still referenced. So, yeah.
You also asked Francis about his Cameroonian outfit in Detroit, and there was some confusion there too.
Well, he said it's not Cameroonian, it's African, and then came up to me afterwards and said, "Just so you know, it is Cameroonian." But he wanted to represent all of Africa publicly, not just Cameroon.
So to the public, he made Danny feel like an idiot, and then behind the scenes, he's like, "No, you were right." And Danny was like, "Why did you say that?"
I know. I have a long and
Francis.
I like that guy. I like that guy.
That guy a lot.
His outfit was
worth noting with the towels. Like, I've sent you interviews in the last couple months where Francis talks about the towel. Like, it was a weird thing.
From another question from Four Corners Sports NY on Twitter. I know Usman said he wouldn't fight Khabib, but is that a fight Khabib would take for the welterweight title, and how do you see that result ending? No, and I don't know how it would end, but that fight's not going to happen. Usman and Khabib aren't fighting at all. Khabib seems pretty like if he's not going to fight George at welterweight, he's not going to fight Kamaru Usman at welterweight. They're both managed by Ali. Khabib has said his goal is to become the lightweight champion, the undisputed champion, and become the greatest lightweight champion ever. So he wants to fight a lightweight. But we're going to use that to Danny, as a Canadian. What do you make of this Georges St-Pierre, as you put it, slander in the headlines lately?
Okay, so before I start, I want to have the big caveat because I feel like when you, in any way, say anything that takes away from Usman, people like some people get upset. Some people think I'm a Colby Covington fan or something. I'm not. I love Kamaru Usman. I think he's an incredible fighter. All that. Can we just pause on the GOAT talk for 1 second? Like just 1 second. Like Georges St-Pierre defended the belt 12 times? Like just go through the list of guys who he beat. Let Usman earn that comparison. We don't have to do it yet. Like I know it's Dana White's job to do it, but if you are not Dana White and your job is not to actively promote the UFC product and it's the next fight, there's no reasonable argument that Kamaru Usman's accomplishments up to this point are equal or even particularly close to what Georges St-Pierre accomplished. It's just not an argument. We can have that argument after 3 more title defenses. Let's do it. Of course, let's do it. But this is Georges St-Pierre we're talking about. I mean, we've got to have some respect for history here. That would be my argument. And like Georges St-Pierre is clearly the greatest welterweight of all time. And if he's not the greatest UFC fighter of all time, he's 2 or 3 on that list. Kamaru Usman is not there, and it's okay to say that without diminishing what he has accomplished. That's my argument.
Well, I agree with everything you said. I think, where would you put Kamaru in the annals of welterweight champions? I have George being the greatest fighter ever. I think if John Jones wins the heavyweight title, I think that's enough to propel him as the greatest. But as of right now, in 2020, this day, I have George greatest. But in welterweight, where would you put Kamaru?
So I guess George 1. Do we go Matt Hughes 2?
I think 2, 3, 4 is Hughes, Woodley, and Usman in some order. I don't care what
and I think I have Usman at this point. I think so. I probably have Woodley 3, I have Usman 3, and pretty close at this point to Matt Hughes. It's just Matt Hughes aged out a little bit, so he has the end of his career isn't as good as, it takes away from it. It's a little bit like Anderson Silva, right? Like,
or BJ Penn too.
Yeah.
Are you talking careers? You talking primes? You talking certain eras? I mean, it's so weird when you talk about fighters because now we can't talk about BJ Penn in the same sense. You have to talk about eras of BJ Penn.
Yeah.
So, but GSP is kind of much like Khabib is kind of one of those fighters where like he had one good era.
Yeah.
So that's why I understand what you're saying. Yeah, it's different. Yeah.
And I think it's beating the guys in here. Dan Tom sent a tweet yesterday being like, here are all the guys George beat who either became UFC champions, were UFC champions, or Strikeforce. And it's like 8 or 9 guys. Like it's Condit, Diaz, Hendricks. Like you just go through the list. It's just guy after guy. So he beat all of the dominant fighters and like guys who had belts in various organizations. Like I just think the quality of competition within his era, like obviously Kamaru Usman at this point is probably better than George was in 2010, just based on the sports evolved. They've learned new tricks, all of that. Like in terms of physically being a fighter, this version of Usman probably beats that version of George. But it's how you compare to the other guys in your era and what you accomplish within that window. And for me, I don't think we're there yet with Usman. But I do. He's the first guy in a long time who I think has any shot of getting there.
I thought Woodley had a great shot because if you're talking about resumes, like look at Woodley's resume, like Paul Daly, Koscheck, Condit, Gastelum, crushed Lawler, fought Steven. Like the first Stephen Thomas fight in like say what you want about the second fight. The first fight was awesome in MSG,
amazing.
And it was a draw.
A
draw.
Yeah. Damian
Maia, Darren Till, like Tyron Woodley's resume is phenomenal, and then he just fought Usman, Burns, and Covington and lost 15 straight rounds. Like, but those are the top 3 at welterweight right now. So, 2 for me is Woodley.
The Rory McDonald loss hurts Woodley a little bit. His claim,
yes,
I will argue.
Yeah.
But I mean, Rory McDonald was also like they were the 2 guys on the ascendancy. If Rory hadn't shattered his nose into oblivion, we might have gotten a rematch there at some point, which would have been fun.
And Tyron speaks about that fight a lot, where he knew if he beat Rory, he would have got a title fight, his first title fight, and he was looking at that and just completely was not focused on Rory. And like he speaks about that fight a lot as like a big changing of his mindset. But yeah, snapped like decapitated Josh Koscheck and then snapped Carlos Condit's leg in half. The Jake Shields loss was a split. That is what it is. But Tyron Woodley is to me it's Woodley or Usman is 2 in my mind in terms of like greatness, probably Matt Hughes, but in terms of talent. Was Usman or Woodley right now, anyway. Let's not forget, Neil Magny getting real close to most wins all time at welterweight.
It's amazing, isn't it?
I feel odd. The Woodley comparisons are weird because I feel like much like maybe like Anderson, Woodley's kind of his resume. He aged out of his prime. I mean, like everyone does. So are we going to count these last 15 rounds or 25 rounds he's lost or whatever as part of that whole kind of his whole career? Or is like, at some point you talk about Anderson, you just don't count these fights anymore. I wonder where we kind of stop that with Woodley. But
the Anderson thing too is I think he lost to Derek Brunson. Like that's his last official win. And if you count that, he's lost. I'm counting at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's a 9-fight streak of no wins because the Nick Diaz technically was a win too, but it was overturned. So it's rough. But someone made a good point on Twitter where they still put Anderson as the greatest, like top 3 fighters ever, not because of talent or resume, but because he loses and he doesn't just like fade away. He wants to keep continuing and he tries to bounce back. And the fights aren't bad. Him fighting Daniel Cormier on 48 hours notice. Like
it's one of the craziest.
It's so impressive to me.
And I asked,
like he was not in camp.
Well, and it showed.
It wasn't a great fight, but it was an insane thing to do.
Yeah, what did Donald Cerrone say about that fight? I can't remember. Never mind.
What did who?
Donald Cerrone. He had a critique about that fight. I can't remember.
Oh yes.
I forgot. Yeah.
Not great.
Not great.
This is one of the many things that aren't great about what he's said and allegedly said.
But
anyway,
Danny, I like what you said though about how even though you think GSP is the greatest welterweight ever, but at the same time, if you had a time machine and took that prime GSP versus prime Usman, I still think Usman wins if they face it head to head. But it doesn't matter because you kind of in prize fighting, especially you talk about the errors and the people they had to fight in that time.
I think like it's across sports. GOAT conversations are hard because athletes get better over time. Mm-hmm. Like the Jordan LeBron thing, go put LeBron James in 1995 and he crushes everybody. Like there's no question there. He is just a superior physical athlete right now. But that's not what we're talking about when we talk about GOAT, which makes it really difficult and should make it interesting if people on Twitter just stop yelling at each other and calling each other names. Like to actually like break it down.
Why do we have Twitter then, Danny?
Yeah.
Well, I have Twitter so I can't yell at people and call each other names. Okay. Well, I want to have good, simple conversations. Get out of here, man. Take that to Canada. Nice guy.
But like for all that I disagree with Dana about, like he's right that Covington Usman, like I think that fight just it gains in my estimation the further we get from it. It was an amazing fight to be there at the time, but like that fight was incredible and did signal something. The Masvidal fight, like Usman fought that the only way he could fight that fight without risking anything. Like, and there's elements of that's also what George did. Like once he realized how to dominate guys and protect his belt, that's how he fought. And there may be fights that people don't like with Usman. That certainly didn't happen against Burns. He looked pretty incredible and fought through some adversity. But yeah, Usman's amazing. But like, it's worth it for this sport as it grows historically and grows in like our understanding of what guys mean in history. Not just to remember that Dana, it benefits his company and his bottom line to talk about Usman as the greatest of all time right now. Like it, and we don't have to do that.
Remember
this? We were talking about this backstage, Oscar Willis and I, after Usman won, and I think there are some there are significant parallels to Woodley's rise and Usman's rise right now, where Woodley has this epic fight against Stephen Thompson, like the first fight, and it won fight of the night and this and that, and that's like Kamaru and Colby Covington, and then he has two fights, and then he has like a fight that is not the greatest in terms of like fan reception. So like that was the Masvidal Usman fight. And then the same thing with Woodley had the Maya and the rematch with Stephen Thompson where they were not well received by the fans. And then he goes out there and taps Darren Till, which is similar to Usman stopping Burns. And now all of a sudden we're talking about, at the time, is Woodley the greatest welterweight of all time? Is Usman the greatest welterweight of all time? Now if Usman doesn't do what Tyron Woodley does and lose 5 straight rounds, he could be the great. I think we could have that conversation right now. But the parallels are there, and it's I hadn't heard anyone talk about it until the fight was over. Anyway,
last thing I would like to point out: without GSP, Kamaru Usman's wouldn't exist because Kamaru Usman's they watch those GSP fights. They go, okay, that's how you mix everything together. And that's how. Yeah. I mean, there's no Kamaru Usman without GSP, and this is just strictly from a skill set level and like strategy level, because GSP kind of he opened up new ways of thinking about the sport as far as training and how to mix your martial arts. So
I think that's the thing that people miss, and like if you weren't watching GSP as it happened, his evolution was as big a part of his story as anything, right? Like he was every fight adding stuff. We actually he helped your average fan understand what it took to become an elite fighter and to grow into a dominant champion. So like that was always part of his narrative and what was kind of amazing about it and why I think he's so special to a lot of fans.
He's also one of the, for as much as Conor, like people talk about Conor bringing the suit and everything to press conferences, George is doing that forever. Like George is really the first champion fighter that would like dress to the nines at every single media event. Like when he squares off with Johnny Hendricks, when he squares off with Johnny Hendricks and he has like the full suit, like clean shaven hair, and Johnny's like 200 pounds, like wearing a Reebok shirt and flip flops, like
whatever the free swag they get when they check in.
Yeah. So yeah, George was way ahead of its time, and I think it's telling that in 2021 we still want to see him fight the current champion.
I know. And I'm interested in that fight. I hate to say it.
Danny went through a lot of emotions as a Canadian during that fight against Bisping.
It was the most unprofessional I've. It was probably the second most. I was like, I won't say who I was sitting next to, but like, Usman Covington. Like, I am not someone like I hate. I don't like the shtick. I don't like anything about what Colby Covington represents. I don't care what MMA fans say. I don't like him. And that one was. I was pretty actively rooting for Usman, but like
wasn't
GSP,
I sitting next to you? I sat next to you at that press.
There was someone else who I can't without revealing who they are. Like, at one point, it was that fight. I just really didn't want Colby Covington to win because I was like, if I have to cover this guy, like as champion, this is gonna for me personally. Forget that's just gonna suck.
There are so many. Yeah, there are so many fighters who I secretly wish ill on, just because I just don't want to deal with the stories.
Dude, imagine I didn't after, because I spent 10 days in Las Vegas for Maymac, and by day 8 I was like, imagine if Conor won. Do I want to cover a sport, and do I want to live in a world where Conor McGregor knocks out Floyd Mayweather? Because I wouldn't particularly care, it wouldn't affect my life, but like the fans and the stories and the narratives that just come out, I'm like, enough is enough. But yeah, I didn't care who won that fight. I also knew Conor wouldn't win.
My blood pressure I don't know, went off the charts. I don't know, when you said that I was like, oh god.
Yeah. Imagine a world. It's like when they were talking about Conor fighting Pacquiao, because Pacquiao's on like the wrong side of 40 at this point and gets hit a lot. People are like, imagine if Conor knocks out Manny Pacquiao. I was like, don't put that into the ether, sirs and ma'ams. Anyway, thank you for the questions. However, we got off on that tangent.
Yeah. God, imagine if the UFC can actually pull off a UFC in Africa, and it's like that's what's truly missing from guys like Kamaru Usman. Think about GSP, but without Canada. It's different. Think of Conor without Ireland. It's different. It just they're just really good fighters.
You need those like when Darren Tilby Wonderboy in Liverpool and the place went berserk.
Yeah,
you need that. Or like when Kane was what they wanted Kane to do in Mexico. Danny, your sister lived in Africa, right? Is that?
Yeah, my sister was in Swaziland for 4 or 5 years. So I've been honestly, either Nairobi or Nigeria. Realistically, I guess they might want to do South Africa. I don't exactly know, but Lagos or Nairobi would realistically be the 2 spots to go to. And I don't think people can understand. Forget GSP in Canada. I honestly think that it would be the coolest event in UFC history. I just think it would be bonkers. There's a video of Migos playing Bad and Bougie, in Nigeria.
I've seen it.
Yeah, and I just envision that. I mean, yeah.
It's Israel Adesanya seems convinced it would be Morocco or Johannesburg for the first UFC Africa. I know Johannesburg's technically South Africa, but he said that they would have the infrastructure and everything to hold the events.
It's wherever the arena is. I don't think that they have a ton of need for basketball and hockey arenas. Necessarily in Africa.
I think they're
South Africa's held a World Cup, so they can hold these massive events.
Yeah.
And their stadiums are I've been to the stadiums in South Africa. Those stadiums are amazing. I just don't know how reliably you can hold an outdoor event.
Yeah.
In Africa.
And just because I don't know Africa, because I haven't been there, I wonder. Because Africa is freaking gigantic, it's like when you say Asia, that's like half the land. But I really wonder, because Morocco is very northern Africa and Johannesburg very southern, so that's almost saying, let's have an event in the Americas, New York compared to Rio de Janeiro. I mean, I feel like they're that far apart,
And it is, and that's the interesting thing is, I mean, Cameroon and then obviously Usman and Adesanya and Nigeria are both northwestern.
That's why I think Morocco makes sense.
Morocco, or I mean, ultimately, Nigeria is if it's not the most populous country in Africa, it's probably number 2. I don't know what their infrastructure is in terms of hosting an event. But I do think like Nairobi would be sick, but that's East Africa.
Yeah.
Either way, they have to do it. Like I think it's pretty clear that
they could have three African-born champions in the next month and a half. That'd be crazy.
They could have 3 African-born champions. Sadiq Youssef is still out there. The individual, and I can't pronounce his last name, who's fighting Carlos Ulberg, is also represents Nigeria. There's a ton of fights. And the heavyweight boxing champion of the world, who holds 4 of the 6 belts, is also Nigerian of Nigerian descent, Anthony Joshua. So the combat sports world is pretty much being dominated by Nigerian and Africa, and specifically Nigerian.
Who's
that dude?
There's
a history. Like Rumble in the Jungle is arguably the most famous boxing fight of all time. Like it's happened with combat sports before, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, let's do it. Let's call it Roots of Fight. Make a T-shirt. Let's go.
I think all of us also want to go cover it.
Dude, I would
love. Without a doubt.
I would love. Yeah. Oh, I think I'm good in Abu Dhabi. Until they open up the water park, unless we can go to the water park again, because I don't know because poor Jose's been you've been down to Yaz Island like 20 times now, and I haven't gone to the water park yet.
I spent 8 weeks of the last 12 months in Abu Dhabi.
And like in one specific hotel in Abu Dhabi, really, right?
Yes, one very specific hotel.
All right, let's fly through these now. Toot.
Who is Leon Edwards going to fight now? From Daniel Pompilio on Twitter. Danny, if you had your choice, real quick, who does he fight?
I mean, I'd like to see him fight Covington. To be honest, like I'd like to see him fight a number 1 contender who we know is a number 1 contender. Let's see if Leon Edwards really is as good as we think he is or not. That's the only thing I'm interested in. I don't need him fighting anyone on the rise. Just let's see. If he deserves the title shot, I want to know that, and then I want that fight to happen after.
And if Covington that's the fight. Obviously, that's the fight. If whoever wins, legitimately should fight Usman. If Edwards wins, dude, you did it. If Covington wins, that means you lost to Usman, but you fought a very competitive fight. You beat Tyron Woodley handily, and then you would, I guess, beat Leon Edwards. Yeah, you've earned your rematch. So that's the fight. Absolutely, that makes sense. Covington basically is turning it down because I don't know why. What's his reason?
I think he wants to fight. I think he wants to coach tough against Masvidal.
He wants to coach tough. All right.
My thing is Leon Edwards. There's more questions for Covington, in my opinion, than fighting Masvidal, anyways. Yeah.
I think Dana keeps talking about Usman Covington. Usman keeps talking about Usman Burns. So it's like, and of course, Edwards is just the last man out. Wouldn't hate if he fought Wonder Boy either.
No, that'd be good.
All that I care about for Leon Edwards is that whoever faces Leon Edwards next, the winner is in line for a title shot.
Mm-hmm.
That's fair to say?
And that's why I think Covington.
I agree.
Yeah, Covington. That's why Covington and Wonder Boy to me both work.
Yeah.
Am I missing somebody? Yeah, I think that's maybe Masvidal, but not really. Yeah, but I think that's it. Yeah, make it happen, Dana. Give the fans what they want. Give me what I want. I like this question.
New divisions, Matt Bradbury. Which divisions needs to be made the most? Atom weight, which would be 105, 165, or 195. What would you name the 165, 195 divisions? Personally, I would call them bruiserweight and cruiserweight. Who would you see as the champion in each of these divisions if they were made this year, or would fight for the vacant belt? So atom weight would be obviously 105. I would personally add that one over 165 or 195. I would just make 165 the new welterweight, and then 165 would be a different weight. 175 would be welterweight. Yeah. 185 would be middleweight. 195 would be cruiserweight. So you just need a 165. It would have to be something like super lightweight or something like that, like in boxing. Because bruiserweight, I believe, is probably copywritten by the WWE for Pete Dunne. So yeah, it would have to be like super lightweight or light welterweight or something weird like that.
To answer directly, I think this is a no-brainer. It's 165. I think there are more fighters at 170 and 155 than there are at light heavyweight and what have you. So like
Heavyweight,
me, you have more mass, like more fighters ready to go. More fighters would benefit. As you said, it's not that hard to make just a 175 division and you're fixed just like that. You get an extra division in arguably the deepest weight classes. For me, it's a no-brainer.
I would go.
Here's how you get the 165-pound division added. You just tell Dana White that no one wants it, and then he'll add it.
Hey, that's your job. Next press conference, like, Dana, great card, great pay-per-view. I just want to say I hate the 165 weight class. It sucks. Like,
and everyone else agrees.
Nobody wants it. Hey, guys, do we all hate it? Yeah, we hate 165. I know it doesn't exist, but we hate it. Just saying.
You know who hates it? Ariel Helwani hates the 165 division.
Yeah,
we're adding 165.
Ariel and Bob Arum just do a podcast about talking how much they how much they hate 165.
Well, they hate 165.
Yeah.
That's how you get it done. Good question. As of who would be champion, I think it'd be pretty similar. I think we could have a lot more champs.
I think, does Usman go up or down? Where does Usman go?
I'd say 175.
They'll probably give him the 175, and then of course Conor signed for 165.
100%. Dustin Poirier would probably be 165.
Well, you need two people. Well, Conor, yeah.
Yeah, sure. I think Dustin would be the 165 champ.
No, but Conor is going to fight for the 165 belt. That's what I mean. Winning is another story, but.
Is Gastelum 175 and finally?
Yeah,
probably. That's a good get. That's a real good point. I hadn't even thought about that.
Dude,
probably.
I think Izzy can make 175.
100%.
I think Izzy can make 175.
I think when John was fighting it, because before his big bulking phase, I think John can make 195. John Jones would weigh in at like 203 just to make a point half the time. So I think if they added a 195 division and a 225 division, I think John holds all three belts.
No, that's crazy talk. I think he compete. I think he could compete in those classes, but he could compete. I will give you that.
Let's see.
I also think John Jones could win the heavyweight division.
Let's see him beat Francis before we go down there.
Let's see Francis beat Stipe first.
Let's see John fight at heavyweight and check a kick from a heavyweight. Let's see that. That's because he's talking about like it's like heavyweights are heavyweights, guy. You know, there's a lot of let's just see John fight. What's that? I mean, let's just see John fight. I don't care. Just fight anybody. I just want to see John Jones fight. Yeah, that's all. 165. That's it. That's your answer.
Next after Jan versus Aljo, it's an interesting time at bantamweight. You have, and then this Trumbo, a long-time commentator, lists them out, deserving contenders like Sandhagen and Font, who are not big names or draws. Then you have big names like TJ and Dom fighting in a few weeks. Also, potentially, you got Cody versus Aldo, and with a win in that one, Cody could potentially jump the line as well. Who actually is going to get the next title shot? Are Sandhagen and Font going to get passed over in favor of bigger names? Probably, and unfortunately, I think we would all like to see. I think Corey did an interview with our own David Martin, who said he would fight TJ Dillashaw next, just so he doesn't skip the queue, because he doesn't want TJ versus Uriah, just so TJ can get an easy win, and then that's the reasoning he gets a title fight. But I don't know, Danny, what do you think? You've seen similar situations play out in various weight classes over the years.
Like, it seems to me, and like this is not based on any reporting, but like obviously what they would like to do is have Garbrandt be next, right? Like if he can jump, they love him. You know, the losses to TJ do have big asterisks on them now. I would be furious if they went with TJ. Like, I do think that there need to be repercussions to what happened, and they're ideally go win a couple fights, prove you can do it without, and you know, test negative a bunch of times. I think that it's not unreasonable, given that what they were doing with Cody before he got hurt. It's not unreasonable to assume that if Cody Garbrandt wins his next fight, he's fighting for the belt match. But that just seems the way the UFC goes. It aligns with everything we know about them.
I think it's going to depend on who wins between Jan and Aljo, because Jan's already talking about TJ Dillashaw, and Aljamain Sterling and Cody Garbrandt have had serious issues in the past over what certain individuals have allegedly said, that we're not privy to those private conversations. But if Aljo wins and they want to do the Cody matchup just because there's history of beef there, would surprise me. And then the current champion Jan is already calling for a TJ Dillashaw fight. So I think, like last week, Casey, when we asked which fight we're most excited for at 259, Alex Savitz and I both said Jan Aljo, because it opens up it answers so many questions after that fight moving forward. So I think it just depends on who wins. And unfortunately for Sandhagen and Font, they're just extremely high-level martial artists that are winning at the right time, but just aren't the biggest names.
What I think is interesting about this question, though, is we kind of accept that Sandhagen and Font aren't big names or draws, but everyone else mentioned TJ, Dom, Cody, Aldo are big names. All those are former champs, essentially. Can you become a big name at bantamweight without becoming a champ? I don't think so.
Sugar Sean did.
But
briefly, but yeah.
I think it's very.
No, I think it's a good question.
I mean, because what does Sandhagen need to do? Because clearly, we mentioned earlier. Oh, if Gilbert Burns wants to fight for the title, all he's got to do is win. Well, what is Sandhagen doing? He's winning and winning freaking super impressively and super violently. Exactly what fight fans want. And yet, the next week we're going, I don't know. He's not a big enough name.
We all agree. We all agree Corey Sandhagen should fight for the title next. Like, that's a no-brainer. We're talking about what probably will happen.
But what take for the UFC, though? I mean, that's, I guess, from the UFC's perspective.
I think he needs a win over one of these guys. I think he needs a win over.
But why?
He just
big names. Yeah, that's why it's just so weird. There's literally nothing Sandhagen could have done other than not have an off night and lose against Aljo, I guess. But even if he would have knocked out, I guess if he would have knocked out Aldo, he would be Aljo, not Aldo. Sorry, Aljamain. I guess it would be Jan Aljamain. Sorry.
Jan
well,
also because remember when Jan fought Jose Aldo on Fight Island. Both Jose and Peter Yan said whoever wins is going to fight Aljamain next. Like, they said that before the fight even happened. So, like, I think it was established between both men that if we win, Sterling's up next.
Which, like, and that's the thing, everything you're saying about Sandhagen, Sterling was in that position, 6 months ago, where it just seemed he couldn't get the title shot no matter what he did. And I do think part of that is, like, we lived it, but, like, the TJ, Cody, Dom, like, triangle that went on for a couple of years there was like the most popular bantamweight's ever been. It, like, people genuinely
I would even throw Uriah in there and make it a square.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Uriah was part of that too. Yeah,
a couple of years removed from those guys being like arguably top 15 stars in this sport to a certain extent. So I understand that the UFC still wants to use what they built there from a marketing perspective. I'm not saying it's right, but I assume that's what this is, right?
Probably.
Yeah. My whole thing is like,
plus, look, also Dominic Cruz is matched up with Casey Kenny, who's a tough fight. Like, he's looked really impressive. Said something really stupid on a podcast with a fellow bantamweight, but Casey Kenny is not an easy win. Like, if Casey Kenny beats Dominic Cruz, that's another name we have to include in this list of bantamweights that could be fighting for a title.
I think, but I don't think we consider Casey Kenny in that elite status yet. I think we consider him kind of like prospect
because he lost to Merab Dvalishvili, who is again another bantamweight that's on the rise because he's holds the record for most takedowns. He broke the record for most takedowns in a bantamweight fight. The person he beat was his own record, so he has like the top 2 fights of most takedowns in a single fight. And interesting cat, trains with Aljo, so I doubt they'll fight for. They'll fight each other unless it's for a title.
This generation that's on the come up, at some point, they just need to beat this last generation. And I don't know that the TJs and Garbrandts are ready to move on, but like that's the way you take their place is by beating those guys. And the UFC, it's just on them to make those matchups.
Yeah, to me, it's on the UFC. It's on the UFC to accept that we need to build up the next generation. And
yeah, it feels weird when we get Gilbert Burns and Kamaru made all the sense in the world in terms of ranking and like who deserves what. It felt like an anomaly in like the last few years where the champion just fights the number 1 contender regardless of like name value. Like that's why Max Holloway was such an awesome champion. He's like Brian Ortega, cool. Volkanovski, cool. like next man up. So like Usman and Holloway and Khabib too, like next guy up, cool. That's the great thing. I like those kind of champions. But
Dude,
I guess Ortega's certainly, when you asked earlier, I guess he's kind of.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, he won and got back to it.
Oh yeah, Ortega, you're right.
Yeah, that's a real good point. Good good get.
Well, who's gotten a title shot after a loss and not been just devastatingly handsome?
That's true.
The last time I ran into Brian Ortega, I was outside a hotel wearing a full flowered onesie at 3 a.m, and I just come from this party in New York, and Ortega was there, and I was like, no, I don't want to be seeing this guy right now. Yeah.
Oh no! Do you remember when you and I saw Brian Ortega coming back from his weight cut for the Frankie Edgar fight, Danny? Oh, I was like, y'all want to see a dead body? Because Brian Ortega could not even walk in a straight line.
No.
I was so confident Frankie would win after seeing that, and then he blew me away.
Dude, drunk.
It's one of those things where if like people saw that, they'd be like, this guy shouldn't fight. Like, this should not be. But credit to him, he went out and great performance.
All right.
What's next for Colby? So similar question from Trinsker Day. In your opinion, what do you see next happening for Colby Covington? In an interview with Submission Radio, shout out to Casper and Dennis. He said, disinterested in fighting with Leon Edwards on March 13th card. Can you see Colby getting what he wants in either the rematch against Usman or fighting an old teammate in Masvidal? Diaz is also brought up, which I wouldn't be mad at for entertaining purposes, or does Colby just sit on the sidelines and let the welterweight division play out where he says he just wants what he deserves? So the answer is either, and I think what's going to happen is Usman or Masvidal. I don't think he fights Leon Edwards.
I don't think they're giving him Usman yet. I think they want to do Masvidal ideally, right? Like, there's money there.
Probably.
Masvidal's star has faded a little bit. As I said earlier, I think Leon Edwards is the right fight. Can I ask you guys one question?
Shoot.
Is like I will argue that the greatest press conferences of all time have always been Diaz McGregor. Diaz Colby Covington, is it the worst press conference of all time? Like, can Diaz save their energy? How does that work out?
Does the Covington shtick work anymore though?
I don't know. You guys live there, not me.
Oh. It feels like a foreign country to me too.
Well, I think. Do you remember after Diaz beat Pettis? I think it was Kevin Iole asked Diaz if he would fight Colby Covington next if the fight was made, and Diaz was like he said it he was so disrespectful, and to the point where I honestly believed what he said. He's like, "Who?" He's like, "I don't know who that is, man." He had no idea who Colby Covington is, and I want to believe that's true.
Yeah, and I also think he would just cut through the bullshit a little bit.
Oh yeah,
I'd just be curious to see them on stage together.
I like the idea of Nate versus Colby at 170. I think that's obviously a winnable fight for Colby, and it will be interesting. It'll just be interesting. Yeah, I like it. I just don't know what the press conference would be like. It'll be just weird.
The problem with making that fight is I think Diaz is at the point where Colby Covington could headline an ESPN card, and it would make sense. I think Diaz is a pay-per-view fighter only.
Oh yeah. I agree.
So and I don't think he's gonna want to fight in a co-main event unless like he said he wants what he's worth and he wants to headline pay-per-views. He fought Pettis at the co-main event because he respected it was the heavyweight championship of the world on the line, and he really likes DC and Stipe. So he was like, "Yeah, makes sense. I'll fight co-main event for this fight." There are the number of fights that Diaz would accept a co-main event slot is you probably count on one hand. There's no way he'd fight especially in close to his weight class. There's no way he fights a co-main event if Masvidal or Usman is in the main event, or if Connor's in the main event, if Poirier is in the main event. So, if the UFC wants to do Colby Covington, Nate Diaz, it's going to probably have to be a main event fight, unless the heavyweight championship of the world is in the main event.
Yeah. Is Colby and Connor is that a possibility at 170?
Probably not.
Just because of the style, the UFC would never risk that.
I think Colby cooks him.
Cooks him, or just kind of
just cooks him. No, he cooks him.
He finishes him, or he's just gonna be one of those like how like just one of those fights where someone gets pressed against the cage for 25 minutes and
No, I think he would go similar to the Woodley fight. I don't know if Covington knocks him out or like the Lawler fight where Covington just doesn't stop. He just doesn't stop walking forward.
Well, and that's why to go back to this, it's like, what's the best fight for Colby as a fighter? It's the best fighter in the division who's not Usman. Like, I want to like Colby's amazing as a fighter, and I want to see him fight the best. In my opinion, that's Leon Edwards. That's my answer. But like, yeah, for Covington, he may be at the point in his career where he also wants the money fights. I understand that, but like, as a fan, as someone who covers the sport, give me the best possible fighter for a guy I consider to be one of the best fighters in the world too. Like, that's my honest answer is give me Colby Covington versus the best.
Yeah, Colby Covington, Leon Edwards is a fight that makes sense on paper, and we all agree that's probably what should be done next if they're doing Usman Masvidal. Just, I think Leon Edwards is the most unlucky fighter in the history of the UFC in terms of what's played out over the last 12 months, so I just don't think it's going to happen, unfortunately.
As long as it doesn't involve tough, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
Oh, I got to see Colby Covington and Jorge Masvidal have a go-kart race. It's like, that's gonna decide. That's gonna squash the beef.
Colby Covington.
Let's have him play giant Jenga. Freaking tough. All right, couple more. Oh wait, did we just answer this? Oh wait, who places this cat? Oh wait, sorry.
Yeah. Oh, the Hamzat thing.
No, yeah, Hamzat. Actually,
yeah, we've answered.
Yeah.
Who replaces Hamzat against Leon? We all probably think it should be. Chiesa's. Did he just have surgery or something? Warner Boy's hurt. Chiesa's hurt. I think Vicente Luque's fighting Woodley outside the top 10. I like, again, it should be Covington and Leon. Like, I like all those fights, but
Edwards should be fighting anyone outside of the top 10.
Okay, but
yeah.
What's going on with Hamzat? That sounds very scary. Hamzat. That sounds very scary.
He's still feeling the effects of COVID, and according to Dana White, they're flying him out to Las Vegas to get medical treatment in the States.
That's pretty dang bad. That's really bad. They got to fly him to the other side of the world to take care of this man who. Well, I didn't read the article. What his teammates said that they thought he was going to die. It was that
Hamzat thought he was going to die.
That's
based on
that's not good. That is not
and it's
good.
Like breathing, lung issues, right?
Yeah.
That's brutal.
I haven't fought 3 amateur fights, but I think breathing is very important for a fighter. So I don't know. Might be speaking out of turn here, but I really hope this doesn't have long-term effects because we've seen lots of articles that these long haulers, and I know you can't say it publicly because of privacy issues, but I think we all know of some other fighters out there who have also been having long-term issues, not as public as Chimaev has been because they have fights booked, but this is a real issue coming up.
You know what the other issue is too is they're in Las Vegas and Abu Dhabi. If your cornerman tests positive, you're out.
Yeah.
Just for precautionary. So if Hamzat is sick, and his coach gets sick, if his coach is scheduled to corner someone, like Hamzat trains at Gustafsson. Say Gustafsson has a fight lined up. Hamzat tests positive. His coach tests positive. Gustafsson's out regardless. Or they pulled a fight where it was like Neil Magny and I think it was Neil Magny. It was either Neil Magny or Ian Heinisch or something like that where they went to say hi to a coach in the lobby of a hotel. Like the fighter went to go say hi to a former coach. The coach tests positive. So then they almost stopped the Neil Magny fight, I believe it was, just because he went up and gave him like a handshake. So I think that it's a spider web of problems if fighters test positive.
And I will say that, like, for elite athletes, like we saw in the NFL, guys who tested positive weren't the same for the rest of the season.
Mm-hmm.
Like there weren't really examples. So like I do think like it's worth, and I don't think it's fun to speculate about, and I don't know that that's our job, but like. You have to worry about this guy, whether he'll ever be the same at this point.
Yeah, I mean, look at what young, upstart, NBA All-Star Jason Tatum is dealing with. After he tested positive for COVID, he said he was still having breathing problems. Shout out to the Boston Celtics.
All right, we're gonna fly through some YouTube.
Rapid fire.
Rapid fire. Rapid fire. Here we go.
Bilal Muhammad's still not getting any respect.
We remember his name. What does he want? Jeez.
Remember the name. He said himself he's in the same situation as Beneil Dariush, the high risk, low reward. Do you agree, Danny?
Yeah. I don't know how much to add to it. It sucks to be in that position. He deserves better. Hopefully his next fight is better.
Actually,
called out the Leech. I actually really like that fight against Li Jinliang.
Unfortunately for Muhammad, he needs to flatline someone. He can't. He's he's gonna be an exciting fight, but he needs to not be an exciting fight. He needs to just dominate somebody and that wasn't competitive. Before I think people are going to give him any respect, like he says, or like this the Prince suggests.
Jet match. When will Stipe retire?
If he wins, he goes after the Jones fight. He'd be crazy not to. If he loses, I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see him fight again.
The answer is whenever he wants. If Stipe loses to Francis, there's a rubber match right there.
Yeah, he doesn't seem like he wants to fight for that much longer, though, does he? Like,
I think Stipe, it's. I don't think he actually cares about fighting. I mean, I'm sure he enjoys the competition, but I think it's a battle of in his mind between brain damage versus bank account, and I think that's where he's at. You fight guys like Francis, you fight, assuming John Jones is just gonna be just as good at heavyweight. You fight John Jones, you're gonna get hit in the head, but you're also gonna make a lot of money. So that's where I think that's where his life is right now, because he has kids, a family, and Stipe ain't stupid. So get that money, and I think once his bank account has enough zeros, then he retires.
And that's why I do think those are the only two fights really that make sense for him to take anymore. He doesn't need to be fighting, Derrick Lewis on short notice to save the UFC next time they go to MSG. You know what I mean?
No.
Unless he wants to. Who does Max fight next?
I'm a weirdo, and I don't care if he fights the winner of Volkanovski and Ortega.
I don't care either.
I know people are like, oh, third time, whatever. Rematch for if Ortega wins. I think to me, if I'm Max, I want Ortega to win, because I think the rematch makes Ortega Max would make 100% sense, right? I think people like that.
And then the storyline coming out of it. Volkanovski loses to Brian. He's like, how come I don't get a rematch when I fought Max right away? Like, that's going to be the big storyline. Like, Volkanovski wins, it's going to be, who should Brian fight? Should we give him Max because Max beat him, or should we give Volkanovski the rematch because he fought Max on the rematch? So I can already see the storylines coming out with the Brian win.
Come on, give him some good questions, kids. Did Luque Woodley, that got made, right? Yeah.
Okay. That's good to go. Danny, I'll ask you a question. We don't see it on the completely unrelated to mixed martial arts.
Okay.
Casey, you know the question I'm going to ask.
This is important. Yeah.
All of our first 9, all of the guests we've ever had for the first time on the show get asked the same question.
Okay.
If you had an ice cream cannon for an arm, a la Mega Man, and you had to pick one flavor to solve world hunger, what do you pick? And keep in mind, it is not a continuous stream of soft serve. It's like a scoop cannon. So it's like poof, poof, poof.
But I just get to walk around and feed people?
Yeah, dog.
Think about it. Don't rush it. You only get, one shot.
You get one shot at this. And there are incorrect answers.
Okay.
Oh, and in this, because we've had people ask questions. In this hypothetical world where this ice cream cannon is possible, lactose intolerance and dairy intolerance does not exist.
Okay, so that's the thing. I am slightly lactose intolerant, so I don't really eat that much ice cream. So that's worth just noting here. Big gelato fan.
Gelato?
Love gelato. Don't love ice cream. Honestly, though,
this guy clearly isn't from America. Jeez, America loves ice cream, man. Ice cream.
We talked about how cold it is here. Like, I haven't had ice cream in 8 months. This is like, if you asked me for like hot chocolate, I'd come at you with some hot recommendations. But no, I mean, like, I really like if I'm at the grocery store and I'm like, okay, I'm treating myself, get some ice cream. Like, I like Skor, you know, like SKOR, like with the chunks in my ice cream. So I that's my favorite ice cream, and ultimately, like, I don't know what the hungry people of the world want, but I want them to have chunks of chocolate bars in their ice cream. So that's my call.
See, that's a good answer because I broke it down where if you're going to solve world hunger, you want an ice cream that is filling, one that has a lot of chunks of various other like chocolate shrapnel in it. My answer for a long time was cookies and cream. Pizza Carol had the incorrect answer saying vanilla because that's just that's a waste of a flavor. Kristen King also had an incorrect answer and said mint chocolate chip because she wants negativity on the world, and that's the worst ice cream flavor in the world. Mute yourself. I thought, so for a long time it was cookies and cream. And then I asked this question to Israel Adesanya, and he gave a very scientific answer. And he said Neapolitan because that's chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry in one scoop. And I was like, damn, you're operating on a totally different wavelength than me. You could give options. So like, say someone just wants the strawberry, just wants the chocolate, just wants this, like the vanilla and all that stuff. So I changed my answer to Neapolitan.
And my thing is, I flat out, like, the problem with my score is like I don't buy ice cream, so I was just like, kind of making that up. But like, I do not like chocolate ice cream at all. I don't like chocolate anything other than chocolate. Like, I don't want chocolate flavored anything unless it's pure chocolate.
Wow.
So, yeah. So I'm assuming that Skor is like a vanilla base with a lot of like chocolate bar flavor tossed in there. But yeah.
You've never had a Skor bar and your answer is Skor ice cream?
No, I've never had. I haven't bought ice cream as an adult. I bought gelato, but like with gelato, I'd get like. Yeah, I'd get fruit flavors for gelato.
There you
go.
I don't, Casey, what was your answer?
I don't know how else to say this.
I enjoyed the mint. I enjoyed the mint chocolate chip because the mint is like sharp and it'll cut people. It's like it'll slice through people.
Oh, so you can use it as a weapon.
Yeah. I'm out here.
We're trying to solve world hunger, and Casey's out here.
Well, you know how you solve world hunger? You have less people.
Oh,
less people to feed. Yeah.
Thanos was right.
Thanos was right, he said. With that, we're going to end this week of the A-Side Live Chat. We went way over time, and that's because we had some excellent conversations. Danny, as per usual, whatever you want to plug, whatever you want to say, whatever you could do, doesn't even have to be about MMA. You can say whatever you want. The floor is yours.
Thanos was right. That's it. People don't need to follow me, to be honest. Like, I don't tweet about MMA that much, so any MMA fan is just going to be unfollow me in a week. So, yeah.
Hey, Dan, I like those weights behind. What are those? Like, you have those old concrete dumbbells? Like,
yeah, I got this, and then I got 10-pound weights that I don't really use that much.
Yeah, do some curls for us, man. Way out to curl. There we go. Yeah.
There you go. 3 amateur fights right here.
Don't stop.
Don't stop.
Good Lord.
Go the burn.
I like this.
This will be on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all of the podcasts as Danny continues to curl his weights. We'll see you next Wednesday, guys. We're out.
Hey, you stopped.